Aloha kako to all of you for joining us here today. Welcome to the first hearing for the Committee on Culture, Arts, and International Affairs. Today is February 3rd, 2021. The time is 10:07 a.m. and we are convening in room 329. I look forward to having robust discussions during this course of this session, and I'm excited to serve as the chairman of this committee and would like to say mahalo to my fellow committee members and the community for your participation today. Today, we have with us Vice Chair Lopresti, Representative Tam, Representative Capella. Mahalo for joining us today. I'm going to go over some brief housekeeping rules before we get started. First, in order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is completed. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only, so please feel free to use the chat for technical issues only. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Lastly, please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. With that being said, let's get to our first agenda item, HB 623 relating to the Bishop Museum. This bill allocates future federal funds to the Bishop Museum. And our first testifier on HB 623 is Ka'ivi Yoon from Bishop Museum.
Chair, just for the record, Ward is here.
Oh,
It's okay.
Representative Ward for the
It's
record
okay.
is here.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Go ahead, Ka'ivi.
Aloha, Chair Gates, committee members, Ka'ivi Yun for Bishop Museum. I serve as Vice President of Operations, Planning, and Program Management. We stand in our written testimony. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Mahalo. Thank you for your testimony today. Next testifier we have is Kirsten Faulkner from the Historic Hawaii Foundation. In support, next testifier we have is Cheryl B. In support. Okay, with that being said, any questions, committee members?
Chair, I have a question
Representative Ward?
to Bishop Estate. Thank you. Do we have any mini max figures that we're talking about? You know, we've always said, and I think it was reminded by speaker yesterday, you know, it's going to be a tough slog for money. Is there a mini max that, I know it's blank right now, is there a mini max that this bill might be considered? If we can be so transparent. Bishop Estate, anything you want to say about that?
Rep Ward, not Bishop Estate, Bishop Museum. One's worth $9 billion trust, and we are nowhere near that. So we just learned that our state subsidy, which was held at $600,000 for about a decade or so. Informational briefing, Budget and Finance recommended cutting our budget $200,000, which would bring our state subsidy down to $400,000, which would be a more than lethal blow for the museum. We have been operating lean and mean for again more than a decade or so. Our state subsidy was once at $2.5 million. So you can imagine, and this was back in 1992. So you can imagine that evolution or that decrease in our state subsidy has made us very lean over the years. If we were to equate that 2.5 state subsidy in today's dollars, it would be 4.7. So the max would be 4.7, Rep Ward, and the min, I mean, with 600,000, it was even difficult. We did have special funding through Act 42 that brought up our state subsidy to 1.5 million. But even then, it was difficult, and it remains to be difficult.
Thank you for correcting me. If you were Bishop Estate, you would be worth billions. So my bad. But let me add, Chair, if I may, you know, this is a state treasure. I mean, you guys at Bishop Museum are indispensable in terms of being keepers of the culture, promotion of the culture, drilling down into the substance and the psychology and the anthropology and the sociology of the culture. So what you're doing is greatly appreciated. It's only during this pandemic that things could be much more serious than usual. So thank you for that, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Ward. With that, I don't have any further questions from committee members. I do want to express my support for Bishop Museum and the efforts you guys are taking on in preserving the culture as well as native species and so forth. All the work that you guys do doesn't go unnoticed, and the tour you provided me and my staff was amazing. So thank you for that. And so with that, we're gonna move on to HB 625, which is relating to the Festival of Pacific Arts. Due to COVID-19, the 13th annual FestPac that was scheduled to take place in Hawaii last year was unfortunately postponed until 2024. This bill would allow the FestPac Commission to continue operations until then. It would also exempt commission meetings from Part 1 of Chapter 92 to allow for more efficient meetings. First testifier we have is Jamie Lum from DBET, who will be joining us via Zoom.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Aloha, and good morning, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Lopresti, and committee members. I'm Jamie Lum with the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism, and the department stands on its testimony in support of this measure. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Mahalo.
Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, thank you so much for your testimony, Mrs. Lum. Next testifier we have is Cheryl Park, Office of Information Practices, OIP, providing comments. Next we have John DeFries from Hawaii Tourism Authority in support. Next we have Mufi Hanneman from Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association in support. Lastly, we have Monte McCobber in support. Any questions, committee members? Questions? No, I'm okay. Thank you. Okay, with that being noted, no questions from committee members. We're gonna continue to move on to our next bill, which is HB 678, relating to state holidays, and would recognize Native Hawaiian Independence Day on November 28th and remove Election Day as a state holiday. First testifier we have is Randy Pereira from Hawaii Government Employees Association in support. Next, we have Cheryl B in support. Kavena Loriano in support. Next we have Sandy Ma from the Executive Director of Common Cause Hawaii. Aloha, Sandy.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee.
Morning.
Good morning. We just have comments. We have comments about removing Election Day as a holiday. We're a vote by mail state, and currently the voter service centers where people can vote in person are open 10 days before Election Day and also on Election Day. And I know there are several bills being introduced and some are moving through the legislative process to actually expand voting options on Election Day and possibly before Election Day. And we just want to make sure that there are not unintended consequences to removing Election Day as a holiday, because then where are these voter service centers going to be located? That's it. I mean, we support recognizing Native Hawaiian holidays. We don't have any issues or concerns with that. We just want to make sure that that voter service centers can find places to be open if they're open on government facilities. So thank you. That's just our concern. We just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Mahalo for joining us and providing comments. We appreciate it. Next up, we have Kalani Akea Wilson in support. Next up, we have Andrea Debina in support. And lastly, we have Pekelo Richmond in support. Okay, I see no more testifiers. Any questions from committee members? Representative Tam?
I yield to the representative.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me right? Hi, my question is for Ms. Ma. So do you see the United States government passing legislation that would make Election Day a federal holiday anytime soon?
Thank you, Member Tam. We certainly advocate for a National Election Day holiday. We don't know if that will happen, but we certainly advocate for that at the national level. Our national office does. Sorry, I do not have an answer for you as to the chances of that happening or when they could happen.
Okay, so my next question is about the unintended consequences. Could you possibly give us an example of what one of them may be?
Thank you, Member Tam. So for example, on Oahu, on our 2 voter service centers on Election Day, General Election Day, there were lines that were extraordinarily long on Kapolei Hale, on Honolulu Hale, all day long on Tuesday. And if they were to remain open as functioning governmental facilities, I'm not quite sure how easy it would be for people to be able to continue to function. And also there were some voter intimidation tactics going on. And so I don't know how safe it would be for people to continue to work during those environments. And this wasn't just in Hawaii. There were long lines on Maui Island, on the 1 voter service center there. There were long lines on the Big Island and on the 2 voter service centers there. You know, like I said, we do support recognizing Native Hawaiian holiday. We're just concerned. I understand, like I said, there are bills moving through to expand voter service centers, but we just want to make sure that government employees are allowed to work safely and securely. And we don't know what could happen if the state holiday is removed. We had understood that the reason the state holiday was put in place for Election Day, which is great to encourage voter turnout and civic participation, was because polling places were located in schools, and we needed school facilities. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Representative Ward?
Following the representative's questions in the same vein, maybe asked differently, we are trying to have robust turnout and taking it off the holiday calendar. Sandy, do you think it will depress voter turnout or not? I know you can't say how much, but you sort of implied that it may be to a degree. Is that correct?
Member Ward, we would like there to be sufficient in-person options for people who want to vote in person to be able to vote in person. Not everyone is able to vote by mail or want to vote by mail. And when I say able to vote by mail, I mean there are people who do not have a stable mailing address. We have homeless population, unsheltered, houseless, who are US citizens, Hawaii residents who have the right to vote, but who need to vote in person. We have people who need in-person services, same-day voter registration, or people who just need a special accommodation, disabilities, or who have questions about voting and they need to go in person. And so that's why there needs to be voter service centers. Young people, first-time voters, statistics have shown they like to vote in person. And so we like to see, Common Cause's policy is to like to see sufficient in-person voter service centers. People with limited English proficiency, when you're mailed a ballot, it's in English. And so there are these services that are provided at an in-person location that are necessary to ensure that everyone has access who has the right to vote. Thank you.
Totally agree with you. We need to have sufficient service centers. In fact, yesterday in a hearing with the chief elections officer, Scott Nago, he said, now remember, 96% of the people in 2020 voted by mail. 4%, even though they stood in line a long time, actually voted by the service centers. Let me rephrase the question this way. Would you agree to an amendment that says, hey, let's keep the holiday at election day and also make this Hawaiian anniversary a holiday? Maybe I should ask Randy Pereira in the unions about that. In other words, just to add another state holiday. Is that palatable, Sandy, in Common Cause, or is this just speculative?
We're happy to have two holidays. I mean, we don't have a problem. We just wanted to raise the concern of taking away election day holiday that may not have occurred to everyone, the need for election day. But
Thank you for that. Both dates, Chair, are sacrosanct, and if there's room for a motion, that's something that we might consider as a committee, or at least start a conversation like that.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
input,
Chair.
Representative Ward. Thank you. Any other questions, committee members? Okay, seeing none, we would normally be going into decision making after this, but I do want to notify committee members as well as testifiers and advocates that the chair's recommendation is going to be to defer decision making on these measures until Wednesday, February 10th at 11:30 in room 329. We are still working with one of the introducers of these measures, as well as the advocates on these three bills to ensure the best form before passing on to the next committee. And so with that, any members have any questions?
Chair, what was the time on Wednesday, February 10th?
11:30.
11:30.
11:30
Okay,
for
thank you.
decision making. Noting that we will have another hearing on Wednesday, February 10th as well to hear additional measures. But
you.
these, we will be voting on these bills at 11:30 on the same day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we're gonna call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.